The drug tester showed up at 5 a.m. and is like pounding on the door. The USA open water swimmer, Brian Crippen, passed away in Abu Dhabi because he was racing in water that was like 85 degrees. And basically it's really dangerous because in swimming, you will faint or you'll pass out. And unlike on land, like you don't drown. We put in 80, 90 kilometers every week. There was no down week. We did 13 kilometers on a random like Tuesday morning. And I was like, the only time I'd ever do a workout like that would be like a test workout on a Saturday, right?
So you were 14 years old, right, when you started specializing in swimming. Then you went to the Olympic trials only 2 years later in 2016. And even though you didn't qualify, you catapulted way up there super fast. How did you pull it off?
Well, I think it was a combination of a couple different things. I grew up swimming and playing a lot of sports. I did gymnastics, soccer, dance. I even played rugby for like a year in 6th grade, which is kind of ridiculous when I look back on it. But I was always swimming, and I moved to Colorado Springs in 2014 and started training with Colorado Springs swim team and Mike Doan, who was the head coach at the time. And I think a couple months after I joined the team, he saw that I was excelling a lot in longer distance, especially in practice. I was just handling training volume better than most swimmers at my age. And so we started focusing on the mile, the 800, the 1500. And a few months before I qualified for Olympic trials in 2016, we were actually at Cheyenne Mountain High School, and I had a crap meet. I was swimming horrible and I was really upset. And Mike was like, this is a small meet. We're going to train for Olympic trials, and you're going to get that Olympic trials cut in March. That was like 4 or 5 months before I went to Florida in March and qualified. And at the time, I didn't think I was going to qualify because I was about 15 seconds off the cut. So I was like a 9:03, 800 meter freestyler going into my sophomore year of high school. And the cut was 8:49.69. So I was like, Mike, I can't drop 15 seconds in 5 months. You're crazy. But we spent 5 months like training doubles every day, working really hard and focusing just on like 800.
What do you mean doubles?
Doubles. So swim in the morning, swim in the night. Every single day. And before that, I was only doing 2 workouts a day, maybe twice a week, like my club team. And I think it's pretty standard in high school to swim every day, Monday through Friday, and then Saturday mornings. And then sometimes you have swimmers that do doubles that will swim Tuesday, Thursday. So that's what I was doing. And then when we set that goal to make Olympic trials, Mike was like, you can do this if you add some more workouts. And so I started doing practices on my own at Cheyenne Mountain Monday, Wednesday, Friday mornings, and then Tuesday, Thursday with my club team, and then every afternoon. And so we just kind of doubled my training for 5 months. And he was like, you're going to improve a lot. And I did. I ended up qualifying for Olympic trials. And I think to answer your question of like, how did that happen is we set goals and we worked really, really hard to get to those goals. But yeah, I dropped a lot of time in that year and a half from 2014 to 2016.
How intense were the workouts?
Pretty intense compared to, I would say, the rest of what my team was doing. I was training probably every workout was between 6,000 to 8,000 yards or meters, depending on if I was training at Cheyenne Mountain, Colorado College, or the Olympic Training Center. And I was swimming about 10 to 12 times a week. So very high volume for someone in high school, but I handled it fine. I didn't have any injuries. And I was the type of swimmer that needed to swim 2-3K to get warmed up. So pretty hard, pretty mind-numbing if you're someone that likes really short, fast workouts. I was doing like 5 600s and like 2 1000s and like long, very aerobic sets. But I really enjoyed it, and I saw myself improving like week after week, which was like this cycle of made me more invested in the work that Mike was giving me. It was because I was like seeing improvement so quickly. It was really motivating for me to have that.
How did you, because short workouts are not that mentally fatiguing.
Yeah.
And the endurance sport is, exhausting. How did you deal with it?
Well,
Or did you have to do it? Were you actually enjoying it?
I'm kind of like that weird, intense type person that really enjoyed it, which is why I think I excelled at endurance swimming and long distance. I really loved long, boring workouts, and I kept track of every workout. Like even when I was like 13, 14, I kept logbooks. So I like went home and wrote down the whole workout, wrote my splits. I look back at them now and I'm like, I was so intense for a little 13-year-old, but I had been swimming my whole life and it's like a safe place for me. And so, you're 13, 14, 15, 16, you're going to high school, life is weird, you're getting older. And like, I would just look forward to going to practice. And that was like my safe, like it was a familiar, I knew what I was going to get. And it was just like a fun, hard workout. And so I think I did a lot of really boring sets. But for me, I enjoyed them and I found ways to, within the set, have goals. If we were doing a set like 10 500s, I either looked at the last time I did that set, or I would compare it to a similar set and I would try to do better, or I'd break it apart. And if I was training with a teammate of mine, so every once in a while, I'd have a teammate join me for part of the set or the whole set. And that motivated me because I was pretty competitive. So I'd be like, okay, can I beat them? Can I lap them? How many times can I lap them? And yeah, I think I would just find ways to like make them more interesting.
Was it normal to nerd out? I mean, was it normal for athletes like at your caliber to nerd out on the numbers? Because you were saying like you were really nerding out.
I was really nerding out when I was really young. I would say it's more normal once you get to like a professional level and you're, D1 college or going to the Olympics. It makes sense to like look at your data and like track things. I think when I was young, I just knew and was around really high level athletes. Mike was training a professional triathlete at the time and I got to swim with him a lot. And I looked up to him and I was like, oh, he keeps track of his heart rate. Like he would check his heart rate after sets. So then I would start checking my heart rate after sets. And I was like just this 14-year-old girl that hadn't qualified for Olympic trials, hadn't qualified for junior nationals, but I thought, okay, if this is what really high level athletes do, if I just fake it till I make it kind of attitude, like I'm going to do what they do and maybe I'll get there at some point. And I was really fortunate to train at the Olympic Training Center. So all 4 years of high school, basically 2014 through 2019, I was there 3, 4, 5 times a week. And I had the opportunity to swim with like Bob Bowman when he came to town. I swam with like Team USA open water swimmers, Coach Rose, who was like a famous distance coach who coached the distance girls that went to Tokyo in open water. They would come to town for weeks on end and invite me to swim with them. And that was really cool for me because I was getting my butt kicked, but I was like, okay, they're writing their practices down. They keep track of all this. Like, so I think that's probably why I did that, but I was also just really intense.
What did the other kids do it?
I don't think so. No. Definitely not. I always felt like a little bit of an outsider and I felt a little bit like, I think when I was 14, 15, 16, when I was training a lot and doing extra workouts, it frustrated me because my club teammates weren't training as hard as me or doing as much volume or taking it as seriously. But now that I'm older, I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, Kate, like not everyone is going to practice for the same reasons that you were going. And I think I could have understood that I was actually the one that was a little intense and they were actually doing a great job. So yeah, no, I think, no, not everyone is like that.
You were obsessed. Okay.
I think obsessed is a good word. I think I was also, it was something that I moved around a lot as a child. So I grew up in Indiana, but then I moved to the Middle East and I went to a different school in grade 5, grade 6, grade 7, grade 8, and grade 9. And so I lived in Abu Dhabi, Qatar, and I think swimming was something during that time that made me feel very safe. It was familiar. I was living in like a foreign country, going to new school. My parents, they were dealing with 3 kids in the Middle East after living somewhat of a normal life. So I think I was obsessed, but I would seek out swimming so that it made me feel like safe when everything else in my life was constantly changing, right? Like moving across the world is kind of hard when you're 12, 13, 14. And I always just was like, well, at least I have practice and the pool's the same. It's still 8 lanes. The black line is very much still the same. And that's probably why I ended up being more obsessed with, because it was somewhat of like a coping thing as
Coping
well.
thing? Or would you say it's kind of like your anchor, your emotional anchor?
Yeah, it was. I just identified with it, right? So I was like, well, I'm a swimmer, so I'm gonna find the swim team. I'm gonna find the pool. And when I moved to Abu Dhabi in 2011, I was 11, and we couldn't find a club team that practiced every single day. And so my mom found the swim team that was with my school that would practice like 3 times a week, and then a club team local in Abu Dhabi, and then another team in Dubai. And so she was driving me to swim team practice with the school, swim team practice with my club, and then an hour and a half to Dubai like 3 times a week, because
An hour and a half.
yeah, we would drive an hour and a half from Abu Dhabi to Dubai and then back like 3 times a week so that I could swim every single day while we lived in Abu Dhabi. So like huge sacrifice for my parents, but my mom wasn't working at the time, and she was really dedicated to like keeping me on track with swimming, because she saw how much I loved it and that I was excelling at it, even at like 11, 12, 13. So, but that was something I think that fed my obsession, was that like, it was just, well, we're going to go on vacation, but we're going to find a pool for you. Like, we're going to go visit family in the UK, but we found this pool, you're going to go. So it was just always like a constant, like I wake up, I brush my teeth, and then I think about practice.
So I got a question here about your parents, and you're actually bringing it up now. Were they also athletes?
Yeah, they were. So my dad is probably one of the most interesting people I know. He's very athletic. He grew up, he actually found sports later in his life, but in his 20s, he started running marathons. He got into Ironman triathlons, and I think he did about 14 or 15 of those.
A full Ironman?
Yeah, full Ironman. Went to Kona in 2015. I got to go watch him. It was very fun. Yeah. And he also has like a black belt in karate. He's 70 now, and he's probably still one of the most active and like in shape people I know. It's awesome. So I grew up with parents that really valued sports. My mom grew up skiing. She's very she was athletic as a kid. But my parents also really valued activities, because my siblings and I had a lot of energy, and my dad worked a lot and was traveling a lot. So my mom kind of used swimming and gymnastics and soccer as like, okay, the kids are going to have something to do. So I definitely grew up on a schedule. I grew up with, every day I had swim, I had piano, I had my homework. But they really valued sports, and I feel like I owe it a lot to them to like make that a priority even when I was young.
Yeah, so if your dad is an endurance athlete and did all that, I mean, genetically speaking, you...
Yeah, his dad, so my grandfather as well, was like a professional water polo player. So I definitely feel like I have like good genes for my parents, but I also think that they really valued like hard work and discipline, and they like instilled that in myself and my siblings. So I think part of it was genetic, but also part of it was just how I was raised.
Yeah, most of us know the sacrifice. I mean, we have an idea of the kind of sacrifices that you have to make for the Olympics, but can you paint a picture of what that sacrifice really looks like?
So I like this question and I don't like this question, because when I think about going to the Olympics and my swimming career, I don't think about sacrifices. I actually think it was like probably one of the most like high privileges I'll have in my life, of like representing Canada and like achieving this little dream that I had when I was like 8 years old. So I would answer it first with that I don't actually think about myself and what I had to sacrifice. I think a lot more about like my parents and my family and my coaches, and like what they sacrificed to get me to where I wanted to go. Because it took a village. Like it took a lot of people to get me from a swimmer that could qualify for Olympic trials to a swimmer that could go to the Olympics. Like there's like a lot of work that went into those like 5-6 years. But I did sacrifice like weekends. I didn't have like a social life in high school. I swam a lot. I didn't go to prom, didn't go to my high school graduation. I missed out on those parts of like growing up, or what someone might be like, oh, you sacrificed, but I never really cared about that stuff, if that makes sense. So it never felt like a sacrifice to me. I think later on in my career, towards the year leading up to the Olympics and the year of the Olympics following COVID. That was pretty hard because I missed birthdays, Christmases, like big moments in my family and friends' life. That was more hard for me than like what I personally had to sacrifice, because I was like, wow, I really wish I could go to my sister's graduation or, see my family at Christmas. But that wasn't always available or like an option for me. One thing that I do look back on is getting drug tested so much, because that's something that I realized not a lot of people know. And I actually, when I moved to LA and was working for the Olympic Committee, a lot of my friends were also Olympians, but in different sports in different countries. And we started talking about drug testing, and I had no idea that some of my friends and peers that went to the Olympics did not get drug tested nearly as much as I did. And my roommate, who competed for Team USA in rhythmic gymnastics, hardly ever got drug tested. And I was like, oh my gosh, because the 3-4 years that I was on the national team for Canada, I was drug tested at least once a month, maybe more. And I don't think that people realize, like, I'm all for drug testing and I think it's really important for clean sport, but you have to track and like tell people where you're going to be every hour of the day. And then they show up during your 1 hour block that you say you're going to be home, which for me was 5 a.m. But it's stressful. Like, you might forget, oh, I'm traveling this weekend. I forgot to change the called whereabouts. So that's one thing that I look back on that I don't miss at all. That was a sacrifice, was just the stress of making sure I was always where I needed to be for my like drug testing. But it wasn't that much of a sacrifice. It was more just like annoying.
With CrossFit too, they say they stop announcing. I mean, they'll just show up, something like that. They
do not tell you they're coming, right? And so when I lived in Vancouver, both my roommates were also swimmers on the national team. Both of them actually had gone to the Olympics in Rio. And so if one of us got drug tested, they would just drug test all of us. So they have these like numbers that they want to reach. And the Canadian Olympic Committee wants to reach a certain amount of drug tests a year to show how much they're testing their athletes and how clean we are. But I remember being in the Springs. This was a couple of months after the Olympics. And I was asleep. I was living at home at my dad's. And the drug tester showed up at 5 a.m. and is like pounding on the door. And my dad obviously wasn't used to it. And so he like opens the door. He's like, what the bad word? Are you doing knocking on my door this early? He's like, oh, I'm just here to test your daughter, Kate Sanderson. And my dad was like, oh my God, he felt so bad. And then the next year they actually tested me on my birthday. So they showed up March 1st and I was home alone, and I like go and I'm like, good morning. And I was so mad because I didn't want to get up early. And then, it takes a long time. You got to give them a certain amount of pee. Sometimes they like take blood too. So it's like an hour to 2 hours, which is fine.
What? That
yeah.
long?
Yeah. There's a lot of paperwork. You got to go through this process, right? Yeah, I'd say an hour to 2 hours every single time. And leading up to the Olympics, I was tested like 2-3 times a month. But I'm all for it. I'm not complaining. I think drug testing is great. I love clean sport. I don't want to like project that I'm not happy with it, but I do remember getting tested on my birthday. And the drug tester and I were actually friends at this point because he had tested me so much, and he was like, oh my God, I'm testing you on your birthday. And I was like, yeah. He's like, well, happy birthday. I was like, thanks.
Out of the pool of athletes going, is it random or do they test all of them?
So they test all of them, from my understanding. Like, World Anti-Doping Agency is its own entity and it tests its athletes. But then the Canadian Olympic Committee also has its own version, which is similar to USADA, like the US Anti-Doping Agency. But for some reason, I think it depends on the sport. Maybe it depends on your world ranking, because I talked to my friends from other countries and other sports, and some of them did not get tested nearly as much. But I think it just depends on your federation, really.
So for those who don't know, how do you get to the Olympics? What are the qualifiers? What are the processes?
Yeah. For open water swimming, it's very different than pool swimming. So for me, my process started in 2018 when I qualified for the national team. That's when I first started doing open water. And I went to a training camp in Mallorca, and the national team coach was like, hey, you're really good at open water. I think you should focus on this. Keep training in the pool, keep working on your 1500, but you have a lot of potential and you should think about like world championships next year and qualifying for that team. And so I went to school my freshman year at South Carolina, and I was trying to focus on, being a good teammate, qualifying for SECs, NC2As, but my real goals were associated with making that world championship team. And so in May of 2019, Canada had our world championship trials in the Cayman Islands. And basically all the Canadian open water girls and boys went, and you had to get top 2. And so that race was relatively easy for me to win. I think I won by like 4 or 5 minutes. There was about 10 or 12 girls from Canada that were trying to make that team. One of them had previously gone to the Olympics in 2016 for open water, but that race was really good for me because it was a small field and I was a better swimmer. I think when the field gets bigger and bigger, it's more about experience than just swimming. So that was step 1, get onto the world championship team. That was pretty easy for me. Got first. Step 2 was to go to Worlds in South Korea in 2019. And the qualification for the Olympics started then. So you had to get top 10 at World Championships to automatically qualify your country. And you can have a maximum of 2 swimmers qualify for your country. So if Canada got first and second at World Championships in 2019, both of those people would go to the Olympics. If you had one person in the top 10, that's it. You can't have another person qualify in the second qualifier. So World Championships 2019, there's about 90 athletes in the women's race. So it's the biggest race I've ever done in Gwangju. And that race did not go super well for me. It was the first time I raced in a field that big. And I think I finished top 30 maybe. So I missed the automatic qualification of getting top 10, but second step was to be the first Canadian. So if I was the first Canadian at that competition, I would be selected to go to the second Olympic qualifier. So it's like a 2-stage process for open water. There's the first stage, which happens at World Championships the year leading to Olympics. And then the second stage happens 2 months before the Olympics, which is the second Olympic qualifying event, which was supposed to happen in June of 2020, but ended up happening in June of 2021 because of COVID. So I had to be top Canadian to earn my spot to be invited to the second qualifier, which happened. I was first Canadian to finish at World Championships, so automatically qualified myself to the second qualifier. And I was pretty happy with that. Like going to Worlds, I was like, I don't think I'm going to get top 10, but I'm going to try, but I'm going to just take this in. And that was my maybe second or third big open water swim of my life. So
you're pretty young. How do you handle the stress, if any, if there are stresses, of competing at such a high level with high stakes?
It's interesting because when I started open water swimming, or when I first got to compete for Canada in 2018 at Pan Pacs, I wasn't very stressed out. I was actually way more calm at the beginning of my career compared to the end, which is really interesting because you would think it's the other way. But I was just so stoked to be there. Like in 2018, I got to race Katie Ledecky in the 1500. And I remember like being in the ready room, like totally fangirling. Like, I don't know why I'm here, but this is awesome. And I think at World Championships, I had the same mindset. I think that's what I loved about open water was there's so many things I couldn't control. Like I couldn't control how many athletes there were. I couldn't control if someone knocked my goggles off or if I missed like my feeding or if it was really cold. I could just control my effort, and I really liked that. So I was like, as long as I give 100%, like I'm still learning. I'm relatively young in this sport, and my national team coach like just kept reminding me that this sport is about experience, and as you continue to race, you're going to get better and better. So I think also I would like talk to my parents when I would get really stressed, and they'd be like, just remember, this is like your lifelong dream. Like you've dreamed about representing Canada, you're at World Championships, like stop spiraling, like just have fun and enjoy the moment. So I would just try to remind myself of like what really matters and go back to like, this is sport. Like I'm not, curing cancer here. Like this is still just swimming. And that kept me pretty grounded. I think as I got closer and closer to the Olympics, my stress levels got like way higher. And that became harder and harder to manage. And I had to lean a lot more on like my family and friends to help me during that time. But when I first started, I was pretty happy. I was like the person goofing off in the ready room. Like I was having fun joking around. I wasn't super serious. So
they say you shouldn't be anxious or you shouldn't be excited. to perform at a high level. But then again, those are just concepts that you have to in your head, you probably know how they work, but you got to actually experience a lot of reps.
Yeah.
So that, you actually get to that level.
Yeah, for sure. And had not a lot of experience in open water. I was really young, especially at the Olympics. I think I was the second youngest athlete there. So I leaned into my youth and lack of experience to also be an advantage and be okay, I don't have all these expectations. I can try and just adapt to the race. But yeah, at times it was hard because open water swimming is a lot more about experience than it is about just pure swim speed like pool swimming is.
So we're going to jump to now that you're talking about it. I'm curious about some of those techniques or experience that you're talking about, because drafting, I didn't know that was a thing.
It's huge, right? So if you watch this is how I like to explain it. If you watch the Tour de France, right, you see how much drafting and how much that impacts the race, because when you're right behind someone on a bike, they're pulling you along. They're breaking the wind. It's the same, but maybe even more in the water. So learning how to sit on someone's feet is what open water is all about. Learning okay, what's my tactic here? Am I going to try and jump to the front and avoid all the elbows and shoulders that happen in the middle of the pack? I never wanted to swim in the middle of the pack because it's just really physical. You get hit, you get elbows, people pull on your feet, stuff happens underwater that you don't see, right? And I wanted to either be in the front or in the outside of the pack. So I'd really push the front end of my races to get out front to avoid being stuck in the middle. But I wouldn't want to lead the race from start to finish. I did one race, which was the race I qualified for the Olympics, but that was also my Olympic qualifying race. So I was I'm going for it from the beginning. But every other race, I was okay, I just want to get to the front. I'm going to try and draft one of these older girls that's way more experienced. And if I draft them for an hour and 45 minutes, maybe I can race them at the end, right? Because it's about conserving energy so that you can sprint to the finish. And drafting is the number one way to conserve energy in open water.
That's pretty cool. How about the fueling? Because I saw how wild it can be when we were at Panpex.
Yeah.
That was the first time I've seen fueling. It's wild. Can you explain it to the listeners what it is and how it works?
So fueling is really interesting in open water because it depends on the course. It depends on the number of athletes. So if the course is 4 laps, you usually get 3 chances to fuel, because every time you come around the pontoon that your coaches are on, they'll hold out a little stick with a little cup and you can grab a bottle and try and drink it. I would say that fueling is the one thing that I never mastered. I actually think I was pretty bad at it and I never relied on it. So going into a race, I'd have a fueling strategy. I would give my coach bottles, but I wasn't stuck on actually executing that strategy. I was more interested in racing. And I think that was also part of my training. I wouldn't fuel a lot during training in terms of I wouldn't drink a ton. I wouldn't really eat a ton because I didn't want my body to need that when I was racing. Panpax is a funny memory because that was my first big senior open water competition. I lost my swim cap. I didn't feed. And I think I finished that race and I was I am never doing that again. And I quickly adjusted my mindset to be more positive. But at the Olympics, I had a feeding strategy and it was I was trying to get in some blue Powerade because that's what I had in my bottle. And my sister has a screenshot of me feeding at the Olympics with Powerade all over my face and none in my mouth. And that's the only picture she posted during my Olympics. And she's I'm so proud of my sister. I just wish she could learn how to drink water. And but yeah, it's really hard. And you can knock people's bottles out and you can have, if the field's really big and you're all coming in to feed, you got to grab your bottle, get on your back, try and get this much water in. I don't think it makes a huge difference because you're not getting that much fluid in, but if you get a little sugar in your mouth, you might get some more energy. Your mind might start working a little bit better. So that's kind of why you would fuel. Some swimmers would tuck gels in their suits, but it's not really I would say cycling or long distance running where you can actually get in calories and get in hydration. You're finishing every open water race wildly dehydrated. And if you do execute your fueling strategy, you're still only getting in like this much water on every lap. So it's not like you can like sit on your back and like drink for a long time. I mean, some swimmers are better than others, but wasn't really something that I excelled at. And I have like photoed evidence of why.
That's funny. So going back to Tokyo 2020, you said the water was warm and your life could have been in danger. Why did you decide to do it?
We raced around 6:30 a.m. and finished around 8:30 a.m. And by the time we were finishing, the water was like 88 degrees. So it was, I think, 5 or 6 degrees higher than what FINA would normally allow for a competition. They tested the water like at like 3 a.m. So it's like distorted the numbers a little bit. But I don't know anyone that would work their whole life for a goal and then have the opportunity to do that goal and then not do it. So like I had no doubt in my mind. I was like, the water can be 110 degrees. If I'm at the Olympics, I'm going to swim. Like I might doggy paddle, but I'm still going to swim. And I knew that the race was going to be really challenging. But I was also like, it's hot for everyone. So I just got to handle the heat better than the girl next to me. And I had some advantage of that. I was smaller than most girls, right? Like I'm 5'5" and a half. Most swimmers are like closer to 5'10". So I was like, I have less to pull, less to heat up. And I generally don't mind heat. Like I love the summer. I hate the winter. So I was not looking at it like this is a disadvantage. I was looking at it as actually this is an advantage towards me because I think I can handle this better than some of the other girls. Which is funny as a Canadian because you'd usually be like the Canadian's the one that's going to struggle. But yeah, I was at the Olympics. I was going to race no matter what. Going into that race, it's not like I was sleeping very well. I was stressed out of my mind. Like I wasn't physically in the best like place of my life, but like mentally I was like, I'm here. Of course I'm going to race. So, but I do think that it's something important to consider when the governing bodies are selecting where we're going to race is like water temperature. And I think it's hard for the athletes because they're not the ones that are going to say no, right? We need someone to tell us, hey, this isn't safe because we're going to push no matter what. And we saw that in, I think, 2014, USA open water swimmer Fran Crippen passed away in Abu Dhabi because he was racing in water that was like 85 degrees. And basically it's really dangerous because in swimming, you will faint or you'll pass out. And unlike on land, like you don't drown, right? So when you're swimming and you faint, you're just going to drown. If you're running and you faint, your body, you're still going to breathe, right? And so that's where heat and water temperature, you do have to be like cautious with it. So I'm not recommending people to swim in 110 degrees water or 88 degrees water, but if you're at the Olympics, it's hard to say no.
Yeah, in CrossFit, last year, that's why like CrossFit's taking heat, right? Because of Lazar, rest in peace. Yeah, of last year.
It's really serious, and I don't think people understand like it happens more often than not. I think drowning is the number one cause of death of kids under the age of 4 in the USA, and so it's not just heat; it's just water safety in general. Even at the highest level, right? Like you saw someone that's on the U.S. national team, you saw someone in CrossFit games. Like it happens to the best athletes. So,
what other strategies do you deploy when you're swimming? Because you said people can be on top of you, below you.
This is a really random one, but I would also put like Vaseline on my ankles. It's like chunks of Vaseline on my ankles to, if someone tried to grab on my feet, they get Vaseline all over their hands, which sucks in the water because then you can't feel the water and your hands are also gross. That one's random.
No, that's pretty good.
It's pretty good.
What
right?
else you got?
I would wear 2 caps always. Sometimes take off the top cap. So, if someone's like, oh, I'm going to follow the Canadian girl with the black cap. Or if my teammate was also wearing a black cap, Canadian, I would switch and take that one off and just have my like white cap underneath. So that I was like, if someone was like trying to draft off me or know where I was, 'cause some races you're competing against like another Canadian or someone from your country and you want to beat them. So I think that's another random one.
There's some crazy mind games going on there.
I think, it's really annoying if you're sitting on someone's feet for an hour and a half. And so trying to maybe move around, or maybe if you're trying to annoy someone, but I think the biggest one for me was like not retaliating. So I think a couple races I got hit or elbowed or like pulled on. And we'd have referees like on the boat, and they'd do like yellow card, red card. Red card means you're like pulled from the race. And my coach was always like, if you retaliate, you're the one that's going to get like pulled. So I wasn't very aggressive in terms of like physical. I think I just tried to work on like drafting and moving around and lots of Vaseline.
All right. So you're a coach too, right?
Yes.
So let's start with physical qualities. What are the traits that can be an advantage for an elite endurance swimmer?
Yeah, I think from a physical perspective, long torso, long arms, tall. I wish I was like 3 inches taller. But yeah, I think especially endurance, you want to be pretty lean. So you're definitely not putting on as much muscle as some of the sprinters. You like very much don't want to be pulling 200 pounds through the water. So you got to manage your weight a little bit more than I would say like a shorter distance athlete. But you can see we come in all shapes and sizes, and you can be successful if you're tall or short. But in general, pretty lean.
That's funny because Chris, when I asked him about this, I asked him if sprinters were generally jacked. Mm-hmm. And he was like, yeah, because they train different. He gave like an explanation for the different body types, and we put it online. And I think there were some endurance athletes who got offended by it.
Yeah, but it's true. Yeah. I mean, you look at endurance athletes in all sports, right? Like cyclists, runners, like marathon runners. You compare a marathon runner in the Olympics to someone who runs 100. It's like completely different body type, right? And I think even in swimming, your most jacked swimmers are still relatively small compared to like someone who's like a boxer or weightlifter, right? Like you still got to pull yourself through the water. So
let's talk about mental programming. So what are the belief systems that elite athletes in your sports commonly have?
Well, I think everyone's pretty intense, pretty determined. My mental programming changed a lot in 2019, 2020, because I think up till January of 2020, I thought I was training really, really hard. And I was like, oh, these workouts are so tough. Like they're pushing us so hard. But I went to Germany, to Magdeburg, like a small little city in Germany, for a month to train with their national team. So I trained with about 10 swimmers that were on their national team for a month right before like all the COVID stuff happened. So it's like February of 2020. And my mental like capacity or programming or like mental strength, like complete 180 after that trip. Like that 4 weeks, physically, it was like insane in terms of like the training that they were doing, but I left it in like really good physical shape, but way tougher mentally, and it shifted my perspective. So I think one like quote I really like is like the hardest thing that happens to you or the hardest thing you do is like the hardest thing that's happened to you. Like, right? So like if the hardest set I've ever done in my life was 10 100s, that's going to seem hard to me. But then when I push myself and do something like 100 100s, that is now my like threshold for like what hard work is. And when I went to Germany and trained with the national team, my threshold for like what hard work is changed like in 4 weeks. It went from like maybe a 3 out of 10 to a 9 out of 10 because they trained like nothing I'd ever seen before in my life.
Can you give an example?
Yeah. So a great example is I flew from Vancouver to Frankfurt, took a train from Frankfurt to Magdeburg, and arrived in Magdeburg in the evening, like 9-10 p.m., checked into my hotel, and then walked to the pool that next morning at like 6 a.m. It's like a 20-minute walk. I was expecting a flush out swim, right?
What do you mean?
Like I just traveled for 15 hours. I'm going to show up to the pool and flush out my body like an easy 3K, right? Like not going to do anything hard. I just traveled. No, it was like 9 kilometers long course. And the German coach so this group consists of like reigning Olympic champion, world record holders. Like they're the best of the best, especially in open water swimming. But I was like 9 kilometers. He did not speak English. So I got the workout written in German and I was like trying to translate it. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I think I'm going to die. But I just took one workout at a time, but we did 9-10 kilometers for every practice, maybe even more. We did 13 kilometers on a random like Tuesday morning. And I was like, the only time I'd ever do a workout like that was be like a test workout on a Saturday, right? And that was just, we're just going to do 13 kilometers today. I was like, that's insane. Like I'm raised to 10K. I don't need to swim 13K. But their whole philosophy is like, we're going to train harder than we race. And that is what shifted for me. And that's what I took away from that 4 weeks was, wow, like if I train and do sets harder than what an actual 10K race is, well, then when I show up to race the 10K, I'm going to know that this isn't as hard as what I've done on a Saturday practice. And my Canadian coaches took the German philosophy and applied that to our training for the year leading to the Olympics. So I'd say most Saturday practices I did leading up to the Olympics were harder than my Olympic race. They were longer in terms of like volume, but also like harder in terms of intensity. And so, yeah, they was just really hard. Like we did one set when I was there. It was like 6 times 1 mile repeats and all best effort. Like, and I had never done a set like that before. And so my mental programming, I think, developed from like putting myself in situations to like grow and challenge myself.
I'm curious, did your performance not stop at all and they just kept loading you with volume?
Yeah, pretty much from the year leading into the Olympics, I'd say I got back into full training at the High Performance Center in Vancouver in September of 2021 or 2020. And basically from September of 2020 until June of 2021, so that 8 months leading into Olympic qualification race, we put in 80, 90 kilometers every week. There was no down week. There was no periodization. It was Monday workout is like this, Tuesday's like this. It just repeated every single week. Like Monday was always 10 400s in the morning. That was the set. We'd warm up, cool down after. But the goal was just to slowly see progress throughout the season. I think I had like maybe 2 days off at Christmas. But other than that, we never took like downtime or deload weeks, which is weird because usually you have that naturally in a season because of competitions, right? And so that year, because we didn't have any competitions because of COVID, we were just training and it was just every week we're pushing. Looking back, I think it would have helped me like mentally to have a couple down like deload weeks. The coaches would adjust our training if we really, really were struggling, but I don't really think there was any period in that 6 to 8 months that we really like offloaded the way that we would if we went on a training camp or a travel meet, right? Usually in a year, you have more than just one big competition. And so after that, usually you deload and you have like Christmas and Thanksgiving. But during that year, it wasn't the case.
All right, going back to mental programming, how do you deal with setbacks? What goes in your head? Because us normal people, we have ways, right, of coping.
Mm-hmm.
How about you?
Well, when I look back on my swimming career, I think I set goals along the way and achieved my goals. And so I don't think I had like any huge major setbacks. I think I had moments where I felt like I failed or didn't live up to like my expectations. And I think I would deal with that by setting a new goal or like finding a way to, okay, this didn't happen, but I still can achieve this. Like, I think when you have goals like every day in a workout, you learn that like it doesn't always happen. And so I never felt that I struggled with setbacks. I just felt like I was, okay, I got to reassess this is where I'm at. Okay, here's my goal. Like very black and white. Like
That's a really good perspective, right? Because for us, it's this thing where it feels like world's falling apart, first time it happens. And it's nice to have that you're saying that, hey, it's black and white. You deal with it or not, or there are ways around it.
Well, yeah. And I think swimming, I think this is for pretty much all sports, but for sure for swimming, it's time-based, right? Even open water swimming and place-based, but like the work you put in is what you're going to get out of it. So I never had to question, oh, well, the selection committee or, oh, like I didn't score points because of the discretion of the judge. It was like, I did an 800 for time. This is my time. So if I didn't hit my goal, I just need to put in more work. I need to work harder. I need to do better. So I always looked at it like that. Like if I have a goal, if I meet it, great. If I don't, I go back to work and work harder. And I that's what I loved about swimming. It's very clear. If you have like when it's based off time, like it's pretty simple, right? You're either doing a good job or you're not. And I took that to practice. I knew that like if I'm doing a set in practice, these are my goals. These are the times I need to hit if I want to qualify for the Olympics. And that was like fuel for me because it was like every day I could either like assess. It's black and white. I hit those goals. I'm going to make the team, So
how did that code get installed in your mind though? Because let me preface this. In CrossFit, right, when we miss a lift, sometimes for us guys, we're like a dog on a bone and we just won't let go. I'm like, dude, I missed that lift, you know. For you, if you miss a time cut, what goes through your head?
I'll go back to when I was little because I think I can paint the picture of like how I am naturally, and like I'm pretty intense, pretty motivated. When I was, I think 3 or 4, I was in Canada with my family, and my dad was going to take my brother on like this 10-mile bike ride. And I didn't know how to ride my bike and stop and start. So my parents told me, you can't go. And I was like, no, I want to go. So I spent like 4 hours in our backyard learning how to stop and start by myself. And I ended up going on the bike ride. And I tell that because my parents have always said, like, this is just how you've wired. Like, you've been like this since you were little. But I think it's developed over time. And I've had coaches that have helped me like build on those skills. When I was in high school training with Mike, I would get really frustrated if I had a bad workout, and I would like cry, and I'd be like, it's just like, I'm like, it's so dramatic, right? He's like, Kate, it's a Tuesday afternoon. You missed your time by half a second. Stop crying. Like, you're going to be fine. But I was like so invested in it. And I'd hold myself to like such a high standard. I think I learned to like try and manage my high, like not have too high highs and not too low lows. So when I had a really good workout, great. I'm not going to like live off of that. Tomorrow's a new day. I'm not going to think about that workout tomorrow and be like, oh, well, I crushed it yesterday. I can back off today. It's like short-term memory for me was like a skill that I learned and helped me a lot. If I had a bad race, okay, short-term memory. If I had a good race, short-term memory. Because if I held on to the good races, I felt like it would take that like edge away from my training in terms of like, I need to work really hard. I need to I need to get more. And if I had a bad race, then I just like think about it and get depressed about it. And I'd be like, oh, like it's not working. My training's going bad. So I had a couple coaches that like tried to help me manage my emotions, be like, keep the highs manageable, keep the lows manageable. Don't get too worked up. And again, going back to the whole, it's still swimming, right? Like it was just swimming. Like it's not anything to get too worked up about. Even when I was training for the Olympics, I mean, I needed times to just like assess, like, this is just swimming. It's not rocket science. I'm not curing cancer, and like kind of ground myself in like what I was doing and try to have fun. Cause I think, like you said, like you can fixate on missing a lift, or you can think about the 10 other lifts you did before that went well. And I try to think about that stuff.
So the swimmers that I've worked with, they said they hated losing more than they liked winning. Mm-hmm. Are you like that?
No, I think, but I'm not the other way either. I think I love training. I just love training. And I loved training more than racing, which is not usually the case. I definitely hated losing more than I liked winning. So yes, I'm like that, but I'm more the type of swimmer that just loved like grinding every day. And the training leading up to a competition was always way more fun for me than like actually the competition. Because it's just like stressful and you're like, oh, I need to perform. But yeah, I definitely would rather, more of the type that hates losing. That like brings out my competitive side versus like, oh, I want to win and like have that glory. It's more like, oh, I don't want this person to beat me. So I think most high level athletes, the ones that I think get to the top at the Olympics, are the type that like hate losing more than they like winning.
Yeah. Let's talk about training specifically now. So do you work on the faster engines? When we think of endurance, you're just doing endurance stuff, but like there are other engines that you got to work on, right?
For sure. I would have probably in a normal week, Monday, 2 hours swim in the morning, 2 hours swim in the night. Same thing Tuesday. Wednesday, we would do a recovery workout in the morning.
What's a recovery workout?
Well, it was still like 7 to 8 kilometers, but heart rate below 130. So zone 2. And then Thursday morning, same thing, double on Thursday, double on Friday, double on Saturday. Sundays were off technically. But I would train those different engines throughout the week. So I would have just my aerobic base, which is my easy zone 2 swimming. How fast can I make that? How fast can I swim keeping my heart rate at like 120, 130? I would say it was probably like 50, 60% of my training. Like trying to, because most of a race in a 10K, you're going to be sitting at a zone 2, zone 3 most of the race. We would have sprinty workouts, which I hated because they were so like short and fast and hard, and obviously not my specialty, which we would do, fast 50s, repeats, stuff off the blocks. getting our heart rate up to like max effort, like 180. That would be twice a week in the afternoons, Tuesday, Thursdays. And then we'd have a really hard effort on Saturday morning that was over distance, so more than 10 kilometers. And that would be a mixture of some of that fast swimming, getting our heart rate up, because in an open water race, you might need a burst at the beginning, right? Sprint the first 200 to get up front. You might have a change in the middle where you have to go 200, 300 all out. And then obviously the finish, you're just like max effort. But I would say that type of training would be maybe 15, 20% of the week. And then zone 3, zone 4, the other 20%.
Do you recover fast from those sprints? Because for guys like me who I don't have a lot of aerobic base, it's pretty scary to get to those super high intense workouts.
Yeah. From the testing that I've done, I was genetically pretty well suited for like distance training. So my lactic acid would never get very high, even after really sprinty sets, even after like an 800 meter all out effort, it'd be like 4 or 5 mil versus like some of my teammates that are at like 16, 17, right? When you sprint and you get your lactic acid up super high. So yeah, I recovered pretty well, but that was just based off of how my body dealt with like lactic acid.
How about dry land training? Did you do a lot of that?
We did a lot of pre-pool activation, so probably 20, 30 minutes before each swim. So when you're swimming 12 times a week, that's actually quite a bit. It's like almost an hour every day.
What's pre-pool activation?
So bands, lateral walks, we would do jump rope, core work, med ball work. So a lot of body weight, like pull-ups, stretch cords. And then twice a week, I'd go to the gym. And I wasn't lifting very heavy. I would do like minimal, maybe like squats, deadlifts, like lightweight, but enough to like maintain my like strength and like prevent injuries. Very different than like the sprinters that I was training with. Like we had a group that had swimmers qualify for the Olympics in the 10K and group swimmers qualify in the 50, right? And I would watch them train. They swam like maybe 10% of what I did. They'd show up, do like 250s, get out, but they would spend a lot more time in the gym. And I think it's important as long as it's not at a cost of like the time you're putting in the water. So that's kind of where it was for us. It was like, as long as we're getting all our pool swims in, if we can lift twice a week, that was the goal. But if it was taking away from our performance in practice, then we'd kind of back off on it. But I'd say probably twice a week with all that pre-pool stuff like every day. So it's still a decent amount of work on the dry land.
Did your coach program it for you as well?
No, we had separate. We had a full staff in Vancouver. So we had like a head coach. I worked with physio, massage, nutritionist. We had someone who was like a therapist too that we'd talk to. And then we had strength coach. And our strength coach worked with athletes at the High Performance Center and then athletes on the college swim team and then also other sports. The University of British Columbia has a lot of like really good like high level sports. So the strength coach worked with like all of them.
Last question. I'm pretty curious because of the high volume that you had to do. How much did you eat?
I feel like it changed throughout like my career, but when I was at like the highest volume, probably like 3,000 to 4,000 calories a day, maybe more close to 3, because it's kind of hard to eat when you're swimming like 4 or 5, 6 hours a day. Like you don't have a lot of time to get in like big meals. So I try and get in like 2, 3 big meals a day and then like some snacks. I used to put like globs of maple syrup in my coffee to get in sugar before practice, but that was probably harder when I got up to that high of volume. It was pretty challenging to like get in enough calories. And it's just, you don't really feel like it either when you're training really intensely. If you do a really hard workout or like a really hard run, your stomach's like, ugh, I don't want to eat right now. So, but a lot. I remember the guys I trained with too, I never understood it, but they would go to like McDonald's between swim and lift and have like 5, like whatever they get there, like McFlurries and Big Macs. I'm like, how did you eat that before? Like, I was always like, I could just like stomach a banana or a bar. So I didn't really have a strong gut. So, I would try and get like 3,000 calories a day, and I would go heavy on like sauces and liquids and stuff like that to like get my calories up, and like maple syrup for sure. So
where can we find you?
Instagram is probably the only one. I have an Instagram. I think it's Kate F. Sanderson.
Sweet. Hey, thanks for coming, Kate.
Thanks for having me.